record. All right, all set.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tora Arsala. I'm the operations director for the Democratic Youth Coalition. We're very pleased to have candidates here tonight running in New York City's Council District 32. I will turn it over to Mary Rose to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Mary Rose. I'm also going to be the other moderator tonight. And I am the director of media. And then lastly, I'll turn over to James.
Thank you. So my name is James. I'm the co-director of outreach, and I will also be timekeeper during the forum. So each candidate will get 1 minute for the opening and closing remarks, and then 2 minutes per response to each question. If anyone goes over, then I'll just step in and say time. And I just wanted to say thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Great. So we're going to get started. I'm going to give a brief overview about DYC. We represent an inclusive national grassroots movement of young activists participating in civic engagement programs that support democratic and progressive campaigns and causes. Programs include youth-led town halls, outreach, and issue-based campaigns, and coalition building partnerships that empower youth to get more involved in democracy. The youth vote is extremely important not only for the presidential elections, but for all future elections. And our work will ensure that the United States continues to receive strong youth and student engagement. Thank you so much to all the candidates who could be here today. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Rose to go over the structure of our call and talk about our Zoom norms.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just as a reminder, you get 1 minute for opening and closing remarks, and then 2 minutes for each question. And also, please, we ask you to stay muted when you're not speaking.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started with opening remarks. We'll start with Bella Matias.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bella Matias. Thank you for having me. I grew up in the district, so I've been there since I was 7, 8 years old, something like that. So I've been there for a very, very long time, a couple decades. And I got into community organizing when I was in college, and I kind of fell in love with that. I fell in love with being able to do things to help the community, whether it was food distribution or educational like workshops and things like that. But everything I was doing was out of pocket. It was like self-funded and stuff. And I was just spending my own money trying to help people or whatever. And then I was like, oh, I want to do more, but obviously I don't have resources for that. So I started getting involved into politics, and that's kind of, my process of how I got involved into politics. And now I'm just hoping to be able to help the community on a larger scale. So thank you for having me.
Great. Next up, Hilal Sheikh.
Not here.
Okay, I think we lost him. Felicia Singh.
Hi, good evening. I'm Felicia Singh. I'm a teacher and daughter of working class immigrants. I grew up with parents who have done service for my entire life. They taught me that knowledge is power and I must use it to do good, which is why I became an educator. I grew up in a working class family, and our working class communities here in this district have been completely left out of not only the electoral process, but legislation at the most basic level. Our city doesn't want to hear the stories of our working class because it's a reminder of their failure to protect our essential workers, our youth. We don't fund excluded workers, and the way that we provide healthcare to our most vulnerable populations add to the marginalization of all of us. Our work shouldn't cost us our livelihoods or our lives. That's why I'm running for office. Thank you.
Great. Next up, we have Joanne Ariella.
She's not here either.
Okay. Next up, we have Khalid Alamari. Khalid Alamari.
Yeah, Khaled, you're on mute. I just, there we go.
Okay, great. I was talking. Okay, great. Now I'm back in. Hello, everyone. My campaign is about 3 things: the past, the present, and the future. My past is humble, public school, and daily after school. The present, I'm running for city council to make the change in our community by leveraging my skills and experience to improve people's lives. As a research scientist and a city planner, as well as city project manager. I have worked on our environment for over 20 years in city government. I'm the candidate with experience needed to make our district the fair share that's needed. It's time to get back to the place that raised me, and let's get to work.
Great. Well, thank you to all candidates for their opening remarks. We're going to get started with the Q&A. So the first question goes to Bella Matias. We're going to go in that order as far as questions go. Housing is a huge issue in the city of New York. Tell us about your plan to tackle the housing crisis in New York City.
Okay, so housing in this district in particular is kind of twofold because there are a lot of homeowners and then we have pockets of renters here and there. So in regards to the homeowners, one thing we want to ensure is that due to, this pandemic, that nobody fell behind, and is at risk of like losing their homes. So as far as mortgages go, we're looking to kind of pass legislation where we can provide city-backed loans to homeowners that are interest-free for an extended period of time to allow them the opportunity to catch up. It's very much modeled after like college student loans, so you'll have like a loan that's for a particular period of time, interest free, and it gives you the opportunity to make those payments and catch up on your backed up payments. I also have already, vowed to not vote for a property tax increase. Every year the city council, votes on whether there will be a property tax increase. That's the way that the city council gets their revenue, and I fully intend to vote in opposed to property taxes. As far as renters, I am a firm believer that if you're working full time, you should be able to afford an apartment for yourself. So something that I want to push forward as legislation is basically, if a person is working full time, we need to bring back some of these voucher programs that used to exist that have been cut back so much, to kind of supplement, what they're not making to cover the rent. Nobody should be paying 2 to 3 weeks worth of their salary towards their rent and having so little left to survive off of. So that's essentially what I would like to do with that, is bring back voucher programs into the city. So, if you show you're working full time, maybe no more than, 25 to 30% of your income should go towards your rent, and the rest should be covered by some city vouchers. So those are in a nutshell most of my intentions in regards to housing.
Great. Same question goes to Felicia Singh.
So housing is multifaceted. I feel like first of all, District 32 had higher rates than average on foreclosures in this district than anywhere else in Queens. And so I think supporting for folks who are facing foreclosure, abolishing the tax lien sale is number one. Also legalizing basements across New York City. We have 1 to 2 family homeowners who do rent out their basements to close family and friends, but really some people could use that extra revenue but can't because of our basement legalization process. So expanding that could really help not only homeowners but renters. We want to also reimagine what public land use looks like in our city in order to expand affordable housing. We need to change our uniform land use review process, or ULURP process, to make sure that it's community led and not led with a developmental, private developers priorities and money in their pocket, which push people out of communities. NYCHA is another place where we need to protect folks who live in NYCHA complexes. Although the mayor has more jurisdiction on NYCHA, we want to push for a people's budget for housing, justice, and dignity, and that includes making sure that NYCHA preservation is top priority for City Council and pushing the mayor forward. And then also supporting our folks who are homeless, and that also means not only expanding affordable housing for them, but making sure that they have sustainable housing, which means protecting our communities economically to help support housing as well.
Great. Lastly, Khalid Alamari, same question to you.
As a city planner, I deal with land use for over a decade. Apparently during the de Blasio administration, they did have a plan for affordable housing in New York City. Unfortunately, places such as Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Long Island City. Instead of giving it to middle-class residents of New York City, it ended up going to corporate America, and you're seeing those apartments extremely, extremely expensive. What my plan is apparently New York City in the 70s drifted from from a manufacturing sector to a service sector. The land use, we still have a storage of industrial land use. In order to make affordable housing available, we need to change the land use in those areas. At the same time, we cannot, and I repeat, we cannot have people leave New York City, especially the taxpayers, folks that lives in our district. If they leave, we lose considerable amount of people with good income that pays property tax. My plan, in a nutshell, is to change the land use, the industrial land use into residential land use, and use those for low income and middle income homeowners.
Okay, great. On to our next question. Tell us about your plan regarding disability issues. Do you support disability inclusiveness and accessibility? Particularly, how do you plan, if at all, on making transportation infrastructure and public spaces more inclusive? And we'll start with Bella Matisse.
Hi, thank you. So in regards to disability and accessibility, obviously that's a population that's always overlooked, unfortunately. And I speak a lot to a close friend of mine who actually, she works within the city council, working with people, students who are dealing with homelessness at the moment. But she deals with a learning disability her whole life. And her and I have deep conversations about this. And actually, you know, I told her it's very hard for us to include, you know, people with disabilities into legislation, because a lot of times we overlook the obstacles that they go through every day. You know, things that we take for granted, like going up a flight of stairs, or things that we take for granted, like, you know, not needing extra time on an exam or things like that, you know, might not occur to us. So for me personally, I would just bring on board an expert in that field and kind of have them tackle that. So I would just create a like a committee to handle those things, and just make sure that they're on top of it, and they're taking care of all the obstacles, and just being inclusive, and just being mindful of everything, the everyday needs that we might overlook.
Thank you. Same question to Felicia Singh.
Yeah, so as a special education teacher, I really hold our students with disabilities close to my heart, and it's because they are one of the most marginalized populations amongst our youth and in the classroom. And so really, when I think about revamping and like looking at education in itself as its own section, it's really about family advocacy and student advocacy when it comes to students with disabilities. It's also really making sure that our families and our guardians understand and have complete access to their child's IEP. So that means there needs to be a more transparent process, and how schools really inform families and students about their own child's needs and disability. And making sure those mandated services, because an IEP is like a binding law document. And so you want to make sure that kids are getting their mandated services, especially during the pandemic and during remote learning, where there might be an excuse to withhold services or prevent services from happening because you're learning remotely. But really, those are mandated requirements for students' learning success. That's one way to help promote disability services. And then the next is our Rockaway Boulevard station stop doesn't even have an elevator. And that's a really important transfer hub to three different city council districts, 28, 31, and 32. And so we want to make sure that folks who are disabled have access to transportation. That is a basic need for our communities, and we don't even have that. So really pushing to make sure that the building of an elevator access here in this district happens quickly, because people have had to wait for so long. Other ways to ensure that folks have the services they need is also in higher ed. CUNY needs to be fully funded so that we're ensuring that children who come from high school to higher ed have continued services. Just because you become an adult doesn't mean that you no longer have a disability, but those spaces could be supportive of you as a learner, and making sure really covers that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Khaled Al-Marie, same question.
Yes, every year, Association of Civil Engineers come up with the grade for our infrastructure, especially the transportation infrastructure. Every year we get a D, and we're heading to a D minus, and that is bad news. Obviously, there are local laws, there are state laws, and there are federal laws to deal with this disability. We need to look at the stock. There's a strong opportunity to solve that problem and have a sustainable transportation for the future. There's a grant coming in from the federal government to put American into work, using infrastructure, and specifically dealing with transportation agent infrastructure. My plan is to look at the stock, to the system holistically, and look at our district, what it needs, every train station, every bus station, and then reevaluate them and put a demand, as part of the social indicators report that we produce as a city to solve these issues. And I will make sure that the funds is available for our district to deal with these issues.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question is regarding women's rights. As our next city council person, what will you do to ensure that women are paid equally? And again, starting with Bella.
Okay, that's a great one. Obviously, I'm a female, so this hits home for me. I'm also a Latina, and if you look at the statistics, we're the lowest paid of everyone. I believe it's 64 cents on the dollar for Latina women, like as of, I believe, last statistics last year. So that really hits home for me. And we just need to find ways to really crack down on this. There's a lot of excuses that people give, oh, women are less assertive and they don't ask for raises, or, this and that. And there's just so many excuses that people give. There's so many factors that people utilize to kind of excuse the gender pay gap. But I think we need to start cracking down on this, even if it means that we have to bring legislation up to rectify that. Then that's what needs to be done, because it's enough is enough. We're getting paid almost, what is it, 45% less. So.
Thank you. Next, Felicia Singh.
So when I think about gender justice and pay, we have to also think about it in a really multifaceted way. Women who, first of all, increasing minimum wage is what we need to do. And then number two, it's also thinking about women in a really intersectional way, where there are women who literally didn't get a stimulus check because they're undocumented. So we really need to push for funding excluded workers. We also need to ensure that women who are survivors of domestic violence have economic opportunity to survive. And so really, this is more than just about increasing pay. This is about ensuring that women's whole bodies, their whole selves, are being protected economically, physically, mentally. And really what that looks like is first making sure that women are in the legislative body to do that, to vote for these needs and make sure that they happen in expanding women's pay at all levels. So that starts with increasing minimum wage. Number one, funding excluded workers, because some women don't make a salary, but they are undocumented and don't qualify for unemployment. So how do we support them? We fund them. Making sure that we work with City Council to ensure a universal basic income for all community members, especially our most working class, who are women.
Great, thank you. Next, same question, Khaled Al-Marie.
I guess the only male candidate in this debate is me, so I better have a robust answer for this. Obviously, I worked for the city of New York for over 20 years. In the bureau that I work for over 4 years, it's led by a female, Pamela. She made a dramatic change. The culture of that bureau was all male for a very long time before I came in. She turned that around. Now about 70% in leadership are females. And they create miracles. They decreased the budget by almost 60% and made our system energy efficient. If elected, I will make sure that my office, such as my campaign, are not only half, but 2/3 women's, because I believe that the brain that they have, especially in difficult times, such as the time where we are, where 2/3 of city council have reached term limits, that we have experienced knowledgeable women and men in the system to take care of the next generation of the city of New York.
Great. So our next question is, as our next city council member, what will you do to reduce crime in the city, and what is your stance on the death penalty? We'll start with Bella Matias.
Okay, so I guess, I'll start with what I feel like is the easy part, the death penalty. So I am not for the death penalty. If you need to give someone, a life sentence, then that's one thing. If they're such a danger to society, we need to keep those people out of society to keep everyone else safe. But do I believe we as human beings should take it into our own hands to take another life? Not necessarily. This is not war. We're here in civilization. We're not, overseas in a war where, things like that, unfortunately, are the nature of the, the journey. But in our society, we can keep people safe by keeping people, incarcerated if they're such a danger to society. But for us to take a life, I think that goes beyond what needs to be done. As far as crime, keeping crime down and keeping people safe, I think a lot of it goes to preventative measures, right? So that means, providing more after school programs for kids, providing more social workers, providing more, positive things for the youth to get into, instead of them being, in the streets, instead of them being, maybe they're from a single parent household and no one's there to watch them and they're getting into trouble. Maybe they're coming from poverty and, they're dealing with all these different things, right? Poverty is a big factor in crime as well. So there's all these underlying issues that cause crime. A lot of people want police, and they're not looking at the root cause of what's actually causing people to turn to crime, which are things like poverty, which are things like, lack of family, parental involvement and things like that, lack of opportunity. So we need to provide these things. We need to provide better opportunities for the kids. We need to provide, social workers if needed for the families to help as a support system. And we need to make sure that, we're helping people rise out of poverty, whatever that means, whether that's, social programs such as, food stamps, welfare, voucher programs for housing, whatever that is, to have these people, in a stable place. We need to do those things so that people can have, well-rounded society. And we can't expect for people not to turn to those things if we don't provide them with the right resources.
Great. Next question. Same question goes to Felicia Singh.
So the death penalty is not restorative, right? I totally do not support the death penalty at all. And so when we think about crime and we think about really restoring our communities, we want to have a more restorative justice approach. And what that looks like is making sure that people have what they need to live a thriving life. Crime is very much correlated with law enforcement. And that is and law enforcement just react to crime. They don't necessarily prevent crime. And so when we look at taking care of our communities and when we look at taking care of our people, what we really need to look is making sure that our communities have the resources necessary to thrive. And what that looks like is funding organizations and funding city agencies that have been reduced in their funding over time that could have been providing services like our homeless city agencies services, youth services, mental health services, to ensure that our communities feel safe in a way that they feel protected in their well-being. That's really what makes communities safe. That's what reduces crime. We saw 5 days without cops in Brownsville and the reduction in crime within those 5 days because there were community resources available 24/7 outside within the community. And it was community members taking care of each other. We can do that citywide. We just need to take the courage and the will to do that. And that starts with reallocating money within our city budget in a more equitable way and making sure that we are employing our own community members to bring those community resources in reducing crime here in the city.
Great. Khalid Alamari, same question.
Thank you. My youngest brother is a sergeant, worked for the strategic planning of the NYPD Central Command Unit. Apparently, and I work for the city myself, and I've been involved in reforming various units within the agency. It takes decades to build the institution, and suddenly you have these people are telling you defund the police, take away $1 billion, do these things that are is going to impact the quality of life for residents of New York City. We need the system. I believe that reforming the police is a must. With today's technology, with the multicultural ethnic that exists, we need to put the resources in the right place. We need to have the police have better training. We need a system that is effective. As a matter of fact, one of my recommendations to the NYPD Commission is that we need 2 CEOs in a precinct. One is a civilian and one is a police commander that came out of the system. It's not a militarized zone. It is a social fabric that that serves the community. So when you have a psychologist, somebody with background in social services, plus somebody with background in police system, come together and solve community issues, that will come a long way. As of the death penalty, I am definitely against the death penalty. We have to have a system where basically to reduce crime, unemployment is, there's the direct and there's the indirect source of problems in New York City. The direct is that you have criminals with mental problems, and the indirect is that there's poverty, there's joblessness. So we need to solve the indirect problem as well. So in a nutshell, thank you.
Thank you. This is more of a fun question. Do you have a hobby that you picked up over the pandemic? Bella,
Do I have a hobby that I picked up over the pandemic? Does food distribution count? No, no, not really. A hobby that I picked up over the pandemic? No, I wouldn't say a hobby. I would say, we had a lot more community work to do, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it. There was just so much need. You had people who were really scared to come out their homes at first, right? Especially the elderly people. So we were doing a lot of home deliveries, PPE gear, home cooked meals. We were doing deliveries to senior centers and things like that, especially like trying to cater to the population that was most at risk. So that kept us very busy. And when I say us, I speak about the people that I work with, volunteering and things like that. So I guess if you could call that a hobby, then whatever, yeah. But other than that, no, it's just been a very different world, I think, for everyone. And I'm interested to see what's going to happen now with the economy. So many people unemployed, and it's going to be an interesting next couple of years getting back into it. So right now it's just been kind of picking up the pieces and trying to make sure the community is held together. I definitely got to spend more time with my daughter. That's been great. She's remote schooled, fully remote. So that was maybe like an added bonus for me. So I guess if you could call that a hobby as well, maybe like quality time with my daughter, but like, it was just extra quality time. So, but that's very much it. Thank you.
Felicia Singh.
Yeah, I gotta say ditto to what Bella said as well. Like I definitely didn't adapt pick up a hobby, but something that I definitely learned over the pandemic was just how deeply important community organizing still remained during the pandemic. Especially when it came to organizing for the census, which was work I had been doing pre-pandemic, and that I did in leading Queen's canvassing for the pandemic, for the census during the pandemic. And that was really important because we didn't want our undercounted communities in 2010 to be undercounted again. But I did have time to watch all of Game of Thrones in like 1 week, and I had never seen it before. So that was a little bit of a highlight, if you can call that a hobby.
Khaled Al-Murray.
So just a little bit about me. I'm an avid runner. I ran 5 marathons, more than 30 half marathon, and always on the road, at least 5 days a week. And I run a lot in Forest Park at the beginning of the district. I work for the city of New York. I'm considered an essential employee. During the pandemic, we were, if you guys remember, we were short on sanitizers, alcohol, masks. Because of my expertise in the labs, I analyze your water that comes to your house, for biogeochemical concept from contaminant, and then we work with regulators for the state and the federal levels. So I hit the lab and I started making sanitizers for hospitals. A lot of the hospitals needed sanitizers, they ran short. I suspended my campaign for a while. I was working almost 60 hours a week, being in the lab, making alcohol, 70 to 75% alcohol for hospitals. And we had a system where we turned 14 of our wastewater treatment plant into a manufacturing sanitized alcohol for doctors, for senior centers. And that was, I was in the front line of the war against COVID. Thank you.
Great. So our next question is regarding healthcare. Tell us about your plan for healthcare, particularly expanding healthcare benefits and making it more affordable. We will start with Bella Matias.
Sure. I think this is an easy one. I think that most Democrats at this point are fighting for universal healthcare, and at least I hope we are. I think that it's time that we get on the level with a lot of other developed nations that are already giving single payer healthcare to, all of their citizens. It's definitely, in my opinion, a right. We pay taxes and we're part of the society. And I don't think that anybody should shirk away from the idea that if someone has a health issue, that they shouldn't receive help because they don't have the financial means for that. I think that's absolutely crazy. We're all contributing to this society, and we should all be making sure that we're taking care of at least each other's most essential needs in that way. So there should definitely be that safety net. So I am definitely for a universal single payer healthcare system. Thanks.
Great. Now Felicia Singh.
So we need to ensure that one, city council's jurisdiction over healthcare is over health and hospitals. And so we want to make sure that health and hospitals stay open. We've had hospitals close in Queens. So we want to support our health and hospitals here. Queens has fewer hospitals because of the lack of federal funding. So one way that we could do that is making sure that we're taxing the rich, because the rich are not paying their fair share. And when they do, we want to be able to use that revenue and make sure that we are actually expanding what healthcare looks like for our communities, especially our undocumented population, and our gig employees as well. We have thousands and thousands of gig employees, including employees who work for Uber and Lyft as corporations, but aren't identified as employees for the corporation. And we want to be able to create a healthcare system that includes them. So funding our public hospitals is a deep priority, especially for here in Queens, where the peninsula of Rockaways just has one hospital and was recently at risk of being closed or changed its capacity, but with community organizing and community fighting, we were able to leave it open. So this is what we need to do to support our health and hospitals, opening more, expanding healthcare for maternal needs as well, and making sure that we have health insurance that it covers our most vulnerable communities. Great.
Khalid Alamari.
Yes, sir. So the last decade, three stress tests we had in this country. The first one was the environmental. We were hit with Hurricane Sandy in New York City. We weren't ready. We were paralyzed. I remember that they canceled the marathon. I couldn't run. And then after that, the impact was in the hundreds of billions of dollars. We're still paying the price for that. Then remember we had the economic stress, which basically the housing collapse. City services were cut by at least 1/3. We had to do layoff. We had to reorganize, reform, reorganize, and reform again. And now we have the health crisis. The health crisis, this pandemic is considered a stress test for how the system is working. Obviously, the healthcare system is a double-edged sword. It is responsibility of the state as well as the federal government. We are a local institution. We could support, we could advocate. However, if the president cannot do his job and reform the system to today's standards, using the technology that exists, CRISPR, there's a lot of reform that needs to be done. We need to support those that can make decisions, and we need to know how the system is made, and this is beyond what city council is capable of doing. I will advocate and work hard to push my constituents and my associate in the city politics to push a robust healthcare system. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Next question. As our next city council member, will you commit to starting a youth advisory task force so more youth folks can have a say in our system? And starting with Bella Matisse.
Thanks. Well, I absolutely love that idea. So I would be in full support of that. And actually, like, I have a lot of youth working on my campaign as volunteers. You know, I have high school students who work on my campaign as volunteers. My daughter, who's 13, works on my campaign as a volunteer. You know, and even some of my friends' daughters and things like that. And I love getting them involved. And especially young women, you know, I guess I'm a little bit biased, you know, being a woman myself and growing up as, you know, as a young girl and kind of seeing like the lack of mentorship in some of these fields, you know, the lack of mentorship in politics and in business for young women. So I love when I get the opportunity to see these young women interested in getting into politics. And I've kind of stumbled across them. It wasn't even intentional. It was, you know, through me reaching out to people in the community and people telling me, oh, my daughter's really interested in get involved. And I'm like, great, tell her to give me a call. And, you know, next thing you know, I'm teaching them about, you know, the electoral process, about, you know, what it is to register to run, what it is to petition, what it is to get your name out there, and all these different things in the process of just campaigning. And then also the process of policy development. You know, they've sat in on platform meetings where we were actually developing our platform, and, you know, they had a voice in that, and, you know, they were able to speak their opinion. And for me, that was amazing, you know, because I've been involved in other campaigns where the youth doesn't get a voice in those kind of things. They, you know, they might get to watch, you know, they may get to do the grunt work. They have them out there petitioning, or they have them out there, you know, handing out flyers, but they don't invite them, you know, to get a seat at the table and be able to sit at those policy meetings and those platform meetings. And that's something that we did that was different, that I absolutely loved. And I definitely fully intend to continue that if I were elected. So I would fully support that. Yes.
Great. Felicity Singh.
Yes, and youth should be everywhere, right? Youth need to be on community boards. Youth need to have their own civic associations in this community. They need to have their own block associations. They need to be in those spaces where we have block associations, where we have civic associations, to be civically involved. But most importantly, youth don't actually learn about government until they're about 12th grade. That's really, really late in a student's learning experience. So a part of my platform is to reinstate civic engagement courses K through 12, along with service learning and along with a strong STEM program, because our youth should be learning about climate change. So when we're thinking about really just a task force, that's awesome and amazing, but youth should literally be everywhere, and they should be promoted to be there. And they should also be paid as well, opportunities, because when our youth, like summer youth employment programs, allow for them to save, for them to help their families. And when we promote and invest in programs like that, we're really promoting the upward mobility of all of our children.
Great, thank you. Kelly and Almarie.
Yes, when I was teaching at Columbia University Sustainable Cities, I was sad to hear that a lot of the students don't have the experience needed to kind of continue their graduate program, go into the PhD program. And what I did when I started this campaign is I posted a internship to do campaign. We hired two, one is from Brown University and one is from Columbia University. What we did is, what they're doing right now, and we're about to go public with this, it's going to be probably a startup for these two guys, two persons actually. They are collecting, we petition, and we are canvassing, and we listen to people's issues. And if you go on the map, if you go, you're gonna find out for every neighborhood, or you click your address, you find out what the top 3 issues are. In addition, if you don't believe in that these are the top 3 issues, you could put in, and we're building a big, massive system that will tell micro problem that exists within the district. Now, these folks, and I'm the only one in the district that is paying them $20 an hour. We pay them $20 an hour. We don't take volunteers. The volunteers are the much older ones that have experience doing work. We're paying them $20 an hour. Also, we're welcoming anyone that wants to work in our district and is passionate to do the work. And we're paying them not 15 the minimum wage, but the $20 an hour. I was also involved in a program called the Envirothon. I don't know if you guys been involved with it. I was coordinating that for the city of New York. You get tested, and we find out what the people are passionate of, the 7 different categories. One of them is public policy, and it's a debate, getting them involved, and then we open doors for them. In a nutshell, the youth should be involved in not a volunteer, but in a paid program in any campaign. Thank you.
All right, can I comment?
Go for it.
Sure.
30 seconds.
Just wanted to quick mention 2 things. You know, I definitely do also have K through 12 civic engagement as part of my platform as well. So, you know, as well as Felicia. So I commend you for that, because I think that's definitely necessary, and it's part of my platform as well. And in regards to, you know, not having volunteers and like paying people, you know, not every campaign has the same amount of funding. Right. So you have to look at money in politics, right? And big money in politics and grassroots campaigns and things of that nature. And a lot of grassroots campaigns are run off of volunteers, you know, so it's not for us to be looking down on the fact that maybe they can't afford to pay so much staff, because because it's a very grassroots campaign. And I don't think that we should look down on that. I think we should definitely promote that as well.
Great. So our next question is, what is your stance on paid internships, and will you commit to paying interns? We will start with Bella Matias.
Great, awesome. And this is what we're talking about when we're in office, right?
In general, for your office, if elected, and also on the campaign.
Okay, well, I stand by my previous statement in regards to the campaign. You know, it really depends on, you know, the campaign's funding. Not every campaign has big money in it. Some campaigns are very grassroots, you know, and we need to give people who don't come from money opportunity to run for office as well, you know, or who don't have financial connections to run for office as well. So I think that in a campaign, it's okay to have volunteers. However, I do think if you're elected into office, you know, you have budget available to pay interns. I think they should be paid for the work that they're doing. You know, despite the fact that they're getting opportunity and experience, they're still putting in work and they're still putting in effort, and they should be rewarded for that, you know. So I think you could work out something where maybe it's a stipend program, very similar to how they do with like research programs in college, where you receive stipends for your work, something like that, of that nature. Not necessarily a full salary, but at least a stipend, you know, to reward them for the work that they are putting in. And it's kind of balanced out with the experience that they're gaining at the same time. Thank you.
Great. Next up, Felicia Singh, same question.
I will always believe that interns should be paid at all levels, city, state, and federal. That's it, period.
Great. Khalid Alamari, same question.
Yes, I did mention that we do have intern in my campaign. They produce report. They're gonna really produce a wonderful journey of how they doing with the campaign. As a matter of fact, our internship is called Sustainable Queens, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're not canvassing, they're not doing any politics. They studying issues that they are doing in graduate program. My campaign is 100% funded by individual. As a matter of fact, I belong to DC 37, Local 375. I refused to get their endorsement. I did not approach them because I didn't believe that they take advantage of members in the community volunteer program, but I insisted that they should be internship. As a fundraising, if you're gonna run for office, you need to be able to fund your own campaign, because by doing this, you need to raise money for your own district. Your district gonna need a lot of resources. You wanna know where you could fund from both the public and the private sector to bring in to make your district a better place to live. We're very well funded from individual in the city, and this is all public information. You could go to CFB and find out every single donor is an individual. Zero PAC in our campaign. Internship is a must be paid position. We must teach and make sure that we empower our young leadership that will take over in the future. In a nutshell, thank you.
Okay, great. And so the next questions, we're going to be rapid fire, so please keep your answers under a minute. As our next city council member, will you commit to not taking money from PACs or interest groups? Then Bella Matisse.
I haven't taken any money from PACs or interest groups, and I do not have intention to do so. So if that's rapid fire, I guess I could leave it at that, right?
Felicia Singh.
No interest and haven't taken.
And then Khaled Al-Mari.
I stated no PAC, only individual donors, and most likely they have to live in the district and are passionate about our platform. Otherwise, if you're gonna donate for a single issue, do not donate to my campaign. And I say that loud and clear. Donate if you're passionate about our campaign and you're believe passionately about our platform. Thank you.
Great. So next question is regarding jobs. Tell us about your plans to create jobs. And again, please keep it to 1 minute or less. We'll start with Bella Matias.
Okay. So I'll keep it very simple. I definitely want to fight to bring more union jobs to the district. So that's a lot of advocacy, negotiations, bringing people to the table, and making sure that we get local hire and prevailing wages. So local hire obviously just means they're hiring from within the district. So not only that the union jobs will be there, but they're not hiring from outside of the district. So that's something that as a city council person, you have to advocate for, a fight for, and make sure you get these contracts within the district to bring jobs there, especially at a time like now where unemployment is astronomically high because of the pandemic. Coming out of this pandemic, when we're trying to transition people back to the workforce, we need to make sure those union jobs and prevailing wage jobs are available and that they're hiring from within the district. So we'll be fighting for that. And I also would like businesses as possible. So many were closed down. So many have, are kind of in the red right now and are at risk of shutting down, so providing grants to small businesses. We also are looking to create a small business resource portal, because there are actually a lot of grants and loans available already. But they might not know about them. So the small business, okay, sorry, thank you.
Great. Felicia Singh.
So I support, in my climate resiliency plan, I support job expansion by building new infrastructure and retrofitting existing structures to protect our communities from the climate crisis. And that is supporting Align for Greater New York's ambition of creating 100,000 climate jobs for New York City, and ensuring that they are union jobs, as Bella said, that protects our workers with prevailing wage and ensure safety on site. And this would really truly expand not only our resiliency, but ensuring that we're hiring within our community because they're union jobs.
Great. Khaled Al-Mari.
For over a decade, I've been working on the climate change adaptation and mitigation plan for the city of New York, and specifically dealing with storm surge. What came out of that is a program called the Green Infrastructure. The green infrastructure is, I don't know if you guys seen them, and they are exploding everywhere in the tens of thousands. I created more than 1,000 jobs, and I saved the city more than $3.5 billion in mandated compliance by the state and the federal government. Right now, we're in the process of getting funds from the federal government, around $3.4 trillion for the whole country. New York City is going to get a part of it. What will I do is that we want to make sure that we will work on the resiliency program and push it forward to save us from climate change. But we want to create jobs, but not only jobs that exist, but also the training. We want to make sure that our force is trained and appropriately for the future. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. The next one is also rapid fire. Tell us about your plan to tackle the issue of racial injustice in the city.
Sorry. So racial injustice in the city. I mean, there's no quick fix for this. I think it just starts with education. That's to me the biggest thing to combat racial injustice, and also, reform in the police department as well. So I think that's twofold. Education. I mean, you're talking K through 12 from the very beginning. We need to start teaching our children. Kind of re-educating them, on how to combat biases. We all have like implicit biases, and we need to teach our kids to be aware of those things. And then obviously police reform, making sure that protocol is being followed, and making sure that, body cameras are on, and that things are being handled the proper way, and racial profiling is not going on. And if it is, that it's being, it's being like reprimanded properly.
Great, Felicia Singh.
Racial justice is multifaceted. There's no one band-aid solution to fixing racial justice. The way we do that is ensuring that, one, our schools are fully funded because we live in New York City, a deeply segregated school system. Two, we really need to make sure that community safety is built and made for people who live in communities. We need to decriminalize sex work. That's also a racial justice issue. We need to ensure that our transportation is equitable and uses the infrastructure we have to ensure that we are servicing all of our community members. We need to house our homeless population by expanding affordable housing, and our green spaces throughout our city. The racial justice is not just one section. It's a structure within all of our systems that need to be dismantled and built back in order to protect all of our people.
Thank you, Khalid. Marie.
Yes, rhetoric matter. And I repeat, rhetoric matter. I am an Arab American, and I remember the backlash of 9/11. I was raised, I'm here all my life, and suddenly they started calling me names, similar to what's happening today to the Asian community. Today, I spend my day in Sunnyside, Queens, rallying for the Asian community. And I commit, and I'm inviting all of you guys to come in next Saturday, April the 10th. We're holding a rally for our Asian brothers and sisters in Queens, with Haven, Queens, to help support them and to make sure that rhetoric matter, especially by politicians. And this is a backlash that started by Donald Trump, no one else. And it's just now the bubble burst. We want to make sure that politicians continue to educate our diverse community. Queens County is the most diverse place in this planet. So let's build bridges.
Great, thank you. Still rapid fire. What is your stance on climate change, more so the Green New Deal? Bella Matisse.
I'm in support of the Green New Deal. I'm not in denial of climate change. I think science has proven that it's real, it exists, and it's something that we need to, combat. And it's especially relative to, our district here. Obviously, we're prone to storms and flooding, hurricanes, and things like that. We have the Rockaways and Howard Beach. So it's something that we need to be on top of. I'm in support of the Green New Deal, and I'm also, in support of giving tax breaks for people who are kind of like looking to protect their homes from flooding, and things of that nature, because it's really, really detrimental. Thank you.
Felicia Singh.
Can you repeat the question? My internet cut off.
Yeah, for sure. What is your stance on climate change, and more so the Green New Deal?
I support the Green New Deal. We need a local level, New York, a Green New Deal for New York. I have a really extensive climate and environmental resilience platform on my website. But one of the biggest things that I want to do is create an integrated plan. You know, currently there's no infrastructure in New York City where agencies and community members are discussing and building a climate and environmental resilience plan together. So we need to make sure that we're writing into law a system that allows for city agencies to do just that together with our community members, which include our youth, our city-based, community-based organizations, our elected officials, our community boards, to really help build resiliency.
Thank you. Khaled Al-Mari.
Yes. Prior to Hurricane Sandy, I worked on the climate change adaptation and mitigation plan for the city of New York. After Hurricane Sandy, the Bloomberg administration took it away and they called it Plan NYC. It's a robust plan to safeguard New York City. Then when the de Blasio administration came in, they called it One NYC. It is a robust plan that is adaptable and cost effective. Obviously, when the de Blasio came in, he came with these radical ideas, trying to spend $160 billion that is not obtainable. There's ways, as a matter of fact, one of my pilot project is Hamilton Beach in my district, as well as Thursby Basin of the Rockaway. We took water edge properties that is owned by the city and froze those property from going into auctions. And we turned into a thriving wetlands. So if those that are not well-versed on the climate change adaptation and mitigation, it's available on the website. We could make that a better place, New York City, a better place to live.
Great, thank you. It's now time for closing statements. So again, starting with Bella Matisse.
Okay, to need to speak to you guys. But most importantly, what I want to say is that, you know, it's time for us to get involved and take our power back. It's time for us to make sure that education is key, that we're preparing our youth and also, you know, even the middle-aged people who are entering back into the workforce, you know, for the future. Again, right now, this is an unprecedented time. We don't know what the economy is going to look like stepping forward. We don't know what the workforce is going to look like stepping forward. So what we have to do is just prepare. You know, education is big for me. You know, Felicia and I both mentioned K through 12 civic engagement. Also, you know, for K through 12, I want to increase STEM programs. If you look at the affluent schools, there are STEM programs in the affluent schools, but there aren't in all schools. So that needs to be changed as well. And financial literacy, we need to teach children how to invest their money, how to budget, and how to do all these things that are not taught within the school system now. And open school choice. So, you know, if children want to go to private school but can't afford it, you know, the city can provide vouchers for that as well. So really investing in education, really investing in housing, you know, making sure people have a stable home to live in. It's very hard to concentrate on anything else if your home life isn't stable. If you're worried, if your kids are worried about getting evicted, or, you know, you're worried about bouncing from house to house, you know, living in a, oh, that was fast. Time. Okay.
Thank you. Felicia Singh.
I just want to thank all of you for giving us space to share our platforms and our stories. Like I said, I'm an educator and I'm a daughter of working class immigrants. That's a really important narrative that is missing in city council. We need more people in city council who've had experiences navigating systems that just don't work. They don't work because they're made to not work for our communities. We need to ensure that our city council legislation is centering our most vulnerable communities. And that is where I'm coming from. That is where my experience is, and that is where my heart is. I would be honored to have your endorsement and your support as a teacher. And I really look forward to hearing from all of you again. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Khaled Al-Mari.
This is the most consequential election that we have in decades. You know, we're in the middle of pandemic. We're about to approach the end of it and recovery begins. So we want people that are experienced managing the system. 2/3 of city council are to reach term limit. We also will have a new mayor. You want brain power in there. You don't want people that come up with ideas that are radical. There's no fun for that. There's also, we need people that can work with other council to push ideas and have both experience academically and experience working for the city. And I believe I am the person that could take District 32 to the next level. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to all the candidates for taking the time to meet with us today. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we wish you all the best of luck on your campaign, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening and a happy Easter.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Happy Easter, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.